All right, now we're starting Chapter 14, Critical Incidents. Unit 1, Lesson 1, Incident Command System, ICS, and Response. While every day as a law enforcement officer will offer unique challenges, sometimes you will be required to respond to events that are outside the scope of your typical duties. Often classified as critical incidents, these are events that put lives at risk and cause major damage to property and the environment. They can be natural or the result of human acts or error. Examples of natural critical incidents include hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, and wildfires. Human-made critical incidents include active shooter events, hazardous material spills, or bomb threats. The Incident Command System, ICS, is a standard on-scene, all-hazards approach to manage and coordinate the operation of facilities, equipment, personnel, procedures, and communications under a common organizational structure. ICS helps manage resources effectively. Just know with ICS, you have an incident commander at the top, public informationer, safety officer, and a liaison officer below that. You need to make sure whether you need to tell people to shelter in place or evacuate, and make sure you have evacuation routes and collection points in place for that. Shelter in place means taking immediate shelter in a readily accessible location or remaining inside a structure to prevent exposure to a dangerous situation that exists outside of the structure. The ICS scope and structure can expand or contract based on the nature of the incident. Be prepared to transfer ICS command as needed. Communicate in plain language, since different agencies may use different radio codes. Make sure you know what NIMS is. NIMS is the National Incident Management System, and this provides ICS training on the Federal Emergency Management Agency website, which stands for FEMA. Again, that's NIMS, National Incident Management System, and FEMA, Federal Emergency Management System, and ICS, which is the Incident Command System. Then we have natural disasters. Florida is prone to many types of environmental disasters, particularly hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, and wildfires. While your knowledge of your community is always valuable, it will be crucial during disasters. A strong relationship with the community can potentially save many lives and help speed recovery after the disaster. You will be expected to work during all phases of these disasters. Make sure you prepare disaster kits for both yourself and your family. The kit should contain the basic supplies needed for a 72-hour period. Make sure you check these kits every 6 months. Right after the disaster, your work will shift from evacuation to search and rescue and delivering supplies, providing security to shelters, distribution centers, and hospitals, and keeping the peace. So make sure your first step is to evacuate, and then your second step is search and rescue. Then we move on here to active shooter. The FBI defines an active shooter as one or more individuals participating in a random or systematic killing spree demonstrating their intent to harm others with a firearm. An active shooter's goal is mass murder. Hundreds of active shooter attacks have occurred across the United States, and the threat of such violent incidents remains a primary concern for all law enforcement officers. Very few active shooters have had previous arrests for violent crimes. Let's see. There are certain common factors with active shooters. These may include loss of significant relationships, changes in financial status, feelings of victimization, major adverse changes to life circumstances, or feelings of perceived justice. But make sure you know there is not one single profile for a mass shooter. Hazardous materials. A few examples of other instances where you might encounter hazmat incidents include a factory explosion, a gas leak in a residential neighborhood, or a petroleum spill in a body of water. In a hazmat incident, the main objectives are to 1. Isolate the area without entering it, 2. Keep people away from the scene, and 3. Ensure people are upwind and out of low-lying areas. The standard of care is the level of competency expected or required when performing this duty. You should not try to do something beyond your level of training or the capability of your equipment when responding to an incident. Make sure you know that you are an awareness level responder. Then we move on to the classes of hazardous materials. There are 9 classes. First class is explosive, then gases, then flammable liquids and combustible liquids, then flammable solids, then oxidizers and organic peroxides, toxic materials and infectious substances, radioactive substances, corrosive substances, and miscellaneous dangerous goods. So Siervo came up with a good way to memorize them. So right off the bat, just know that explosive and gases are first, 1 and 2. And then you move on to flammable liquids, flammable solids, and then oxidizers, which helps flames. So just remember the first 5 kind of have to do with fire and explosives. So you got explosive gases, flammable liquid, flammable solid, then oxidizers, which help flames. And then from there, we move on to toxic materials and infectious diseases. And then you go to the other extreme, which is radioactive substances. And then you have corrosive substances. And then 9 is just miscellaneous. With these, explosives are materials or devices designed to release energy very rapidly. Dynamite, black powder, small arms. Then you have gases such as hydrogen. Gases are materials that are neither solid nor liquid at ordinary temperatures, and they are contained under pressure. Then you have flammable liquids such as gasoline, flammable solids like magnesium or sulfur. Then you have oxidizers like bleach, toxic materials or infectious diseases like medical waste and biohazards, radioactive like X-rays, corrosive materials that cause irreversible damage to human tissues like acids. And miscellaneous, you have like ion batteries, dry ice, molten sulfur, hazardous waste, things like that. Okay, then we have occupancy and location, container size and shape, placards and labels, shipping papers and facility documents, colors and markings. And if I can find what Detective Schwab gave us to help remember that, it was only clueless people stay close to hazmat. So only is O, then C, P, S, C, H. So only, occupancy, location, clueless, container, shape and size, people, placards, labels, stay, shipping papers and facility documents, close, colors and markings, and hazmat, human senses. So again, that is only clueless people stay close to hazmat. So occupancy and location. Occupancy refers to a structure and its use. Some examples are manufacturing facilities, storage facilities, retail establishments, and residencies. A location refers to an area and its use. Some examples are industrial parks, business districts, agricultural areas, and residential neighborhoods. So just remember that occupancy is like the structure or a building, where location is kind of like an area. So it's not just one building, it's kind of like an area that can have land, it can have buildings, and a combination of all of that. Then we have container and shape. The main types of containers include portable, fixed, and transportation containers. There's a direct relationship between the size of the container and the size that would be affected by whether there was a bomb in there or a biohazard. Obviously, the bigger, container, bigger boom. Simple as that. Bigger container, bigger the area covered. Containers that store contents under pressure, such as propane or oxygen tanks, can have additional problems like explosions and vapor releases. Placards and labels. Regulations govern the use of placards or labels on vehicles. It's all 4 sides of a vehicle, rail car, or other large container, or on individual packages. In special circumstances, the U.S. Department of Transportation does not require placards. Remember, that's only in special circumstances. Anything that holds 2 or more classes of hazardous materials should display a dangerous placard. So again, a dangerous placard, 2 or more hazard materials are contained in, whatever that truck or whatever mode of transportation or wherever that stuff is being stored. So dangerous, you need 2. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency requires all pesticides and some other chemical substances to show warning labels on the outside of the container to indicate harmful contents. Remember that even if you do not see a placard, label, or other warning, hazardous materials may still be present. So test question comes up where it says there's no placard and there's nothing identifying any hazardous materials. Could there still be some inside? Yes, because people might not label them, or maybe it doesn't need a label, but it's still a hazard. Many reasons why. Shipping papers and facility documents. Commercial vehicle operators are required to carry documents that list the contents of their shipment. These documents are called shipping papers or shipping manifests, and they help you identify what they're transporting, what they're carrying. One example of a facility document is a safety data sheet. These documents must be displayed in facilities where a hazardous substance is stored, manufactured, or used. So every facility that does store, manufacture, or uses hazard materials, they will have a safety data sheet, an SDS. Then you have an ERP, which is an emergency response plan. And then you have the emergency response plan is a written plan that describes what an organization will do during various major events. An agency emergency response plan sets safe and uniform guidelines for response to incidents involving weapons of mass destruction or hazardous materials. So an ERP is just a written plan that describes what they're going to do when shit hits the fan. And that's just uniform standard guidelines. Then we have colors and markings. Colors of the placards and the labels. Not really much going on here besides just what it says, colors and markings. Then you have the NFPA 704 diamonds. NFPA stands for the National Fire Protection Association, and they have developed a standard facility and vehicle marking system called the 704 system. That is that diamond shape, and it's divided into 4 sections that indicate these types of risks. So with blue, remember health hazards. Red, flammability hazards. Yellow, reactivity. And white, other, with special hazards. So just remember blue being health. Red, think of fire as red. Yellow, think of like radioactive material. It's always with a yellow sign, so think reactivity for yellow. And then white is just other information with special hazards. And blue, think of Blue Cross Blue Shield. That's health insurance. So that's health, right? So blue, health, Blue Shield. Red, fire, flammable. Yellow, radioactive, reactive. And white is just anything else. In each area, a number from 0 to 4 indicates the material's relative hazard, with 0 indicating no hazard and 4 indicating the highest hazard. So that's easy. 0 is nothing, and the higher you go, the more it is, 4 being the highest. So remember, it's 0 through 4. Then we come to our senses. You have your 5 senses, but note that sight and hearing are considered lower risk senses when identifying hazardous materials. And if you're stuck on the test with this, just take a breath and think through your senses. If you're seeing something from far away, that doesn't hurt you. If you're hearing something, that's not hurting you, right? If it's really loud, sure, it can hurt your eardrums, but that has nothing to do with hazardous materials. Where if you think about the other senses, such as taste, smell, and touch, those can all hurt you. You know, touch, corrosive, you could burn your skin. Smell, that's going right into your body. Kill brain cells, and then obviously taste is going straight into your body as well. So just think about it in that way. With your hearing and sight, you're looking for pressure releases, smoke or fire, liquids, gas leaks, vapor clouds, condensation on pipelines, chemical reactions, and mass casualties. Just know that smell, touch, and taste are considered high-risk senses, and never use them to identify a hazardous material. The Emergency Response Guidebook can help you identify hazard materials when responding to hazmat situations. Also know when it comes to the Emergency Response Guidebook, the orange color-coded pages are the most important part of the ERG. The orange color-coded pages, they're the most important, but they also have 3 main topics of each substance identified in the orange. You have potential hazards, public safety, and emergency response. So potential hazards, this just describes potential hazards that the materials may display if there's a fire or explosion, and health effects. Then you have public safety, and there's 3 parts to public safety. Think of notification, which the notification subsection lets you know the first thing to do when you call to a scene with hazmat. 2, protective clothing, obviously PPE, booties, whatever you have. We usually don't have this kind of stuff, so that would be, specialty units. And then evacuation. So after isolating the immediate danger area, the next step is to evacuate or protect people in the downwind hazard area or within the radius of the incident. The evacuation subsection also gives information about how far people should stay away from a spill, known as the protective action distance. Consult the table of initial isolation and protective action distances, which is the green section. Remember, green for protective action distance is the type of hazard materials that is highlighted. And also know that fire creates the potential for an explosion or a boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion, which is a BLEVE. A boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion. So let me recover. Remember, we got 3 main topics under orange: potential hazards, public safety, and emergency response. Under public safety, I went through notification, protective clothing, PPE, and evacuation. So just remember, with public safety, these are things that are protecting the public and yourself. So you're notifying the public, you're wearing the PPE, and you're evacuating the public. Then we move on to the final one, which is emergency response, which is fire, spill or leak, and first aid. So these are how you're responding and kind of to what you're responding. So first you have fire. Normal fire extinguisher training is not sufficient to fight a fire that directly involves hazmat materials. So your normal fire extinguishers are just not going to work. Know that operational level personnel with the necessary protection and training can accomplish a defensive fire attack, where technician level personnel must conduct an offensive fire attack. Then you have your spill or leak. Operational level personnel can perform spill control, and they can also activate remote shutoff, where technicians can perform the leak control by actually fixing where the leak is from. Then you have first aid. Do not allow anyone or anything to leave the area without evacuation for decontamination by properly protected qualified personnel. So let's some ways to remember this here. So when it comes to, remember, wear awareness, we're the cops, right? Then look at operational as like defense and control. And then look at technicians as offense. They stop things, they clean it, and they fix it. So my opinion on operational versus technician is operational is they're shutting off the valve, they're containing the issue, and they're doing defense, right? You're containing it, you're defending it, you're making sure it doesn't spread. Where the technicians are the ones who go on the offense. They're going in, they're fixing it, they're actually repairing the pipes, they're repairing the stuff, and they're cleaning up the mess. That would be more of the technician viewpoint on that. That's what I've taken from what I read here. Then make sure you know what OSHA is, which is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. The regulations require a structured termination process to hazmat situations. And there are 3 steps with the OSHA termination process. You have on-scene debriefing, incident critique, and after-action analysis. Those speak for themselves. Again, for OSHA, 3 steps for termination: on-scene debriefing, incident critique, and after-action analysis. Then we move on to meth and chemical suicide. Meth labs are locations where meth is manufactured. A meth lab can be as small as a soda bottle or as large as a warehouse. A simple chemical process converts pseudoephedrine or ephedrine into methamphetamine. So remember, just pseudo converts into meth here. Then common methods used in making meth. There are 3 here. You have the one-pot shake-and-bake method, the red phosphorus method, and the Nazi anhydrous ammonia method. So again, shake and bake, red phosphorus, and Nazi. Meth labs may produce strong chemical odors similar to rotten eggs or cat urine. Some signs to meth labs are dead vegetation, and make sure, like, around the area, and be aware of the toxic nature of the byproducts. Safety response. Meth labs are safety hazards, and because they're flammable with explosive chemicals that are under pressure or can be heated. Meth labs can also be booby-trapped. Remember that. Booby-trapped, and they are flammable and toxic gases and explosions. The decontamination process for a meth lab incident is the same for any hazmat exposure. Chemical suicide, also known as detergent suicide. Should be easy enough to remember, but if you don't, think of the Tide Pod Challenge where people are dying and killing themselves. So, chemical suicide, also known as detergent suicide. A way of committing suicide that involves mixing 2 or more easily acquired chemicals. So, chemical suicide, you need 2 or more chemicals. The most common method uses hydrogen sulfide and hydrogen cyanide. So, again, they both take hydrogen. One is sulfide and one is cyanide. Those are the most common methods of chemical suicide. Here are some signs to seeing that someone committed chemical suicide. Unresponsive or sleeping person in a vehicle. Warning signs: tape the doors or windows. The smell like rotten eggs or sulfur. A suicide note inside the vehicle or area. Pennies in the area that are tarnished with residue. Yellow, green, or white residue on the vehicle seats, dashboard, or windows. Buckets for mixing the chemicals. A vehicle's inside door handles removed. Tape or towels sealing a door or air vents. A bag over someone's head. Then we're going to move on here to types of explosive devices. Military ordnance. Military devices can be easily acquired and are generally recognizable. They include hand grenades, landmines, and rocket launchers. Improvised explosive devices, which is an IED. Improvised explosive device is a homemade bomb built and used in ways other than the conventional military action. An IED is made from commercially available materials and can be disguised as almost anything. Make sure you treat anything found under suspicious circumstances as a possible explosive device. Make sure you know that there are mail bombs, which should be transferred in the mail. Letters are handwritten, too much postage, misspelling, discoloration, wires, strange odors, the packaging looks weird, things like that. Then you have a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device, which is a VBIED, vehicle-borne IED. Let's see, indicators of a VBIED: a vehicle that is parked suspiciously close to a building or in a restricted area without proper decals or stickers. A car that is unfamiliar to building occupants or seems to have a heavy load by a low riding rear axle. vehicle that has strange smell or leaks coming from it, obviously bomb canine, things like that. Then we have incendiary devices. Incendiary devices can start fires, destroy property, and harm people. Well-known examples are Molotov cocktails, napalm, and fire bombs. Rioters, arsonists, and criminals frequently use these types of devices. These devices consist of a minimum of 3 components. So ignition source, a combustible fillable material, and a container. So whether that be, a mini firework inside of a glass jar filled with gasoline, right? Or your simple Molotov cocktail where you got the rag on fire inside of a bottle with gas. So 3 things for incendiary devices and 2 things for chemical suicide, which is also detergent suicide. Means of detonation. A creative bomb maker can construct an explosive device to detonate through a number of methods. Some examples include tripwires, pressure switches, motion detectors, infrared beams, and remote triggers. Responding to bomb threats. So responding to bomb threats are very similar to responding to any type of major critical incident threats that you come across. So keep that in mind. Most threats come via telephone. However, you can get voicemail, notes, social media, letter, mail, fax, whatever. A common policy or rule is to be out of a building at least 30 minutes before the time of detonation and not return until the building has been cleared. Then when it comes to using radio and transmitting equipment, notify dispatch and supervisors just before arrival if you plan to turn off radios or other equipment that emits radio waves. Make sure when you're approaching the scene that if you know the device's location, choose a route that leads to a stopping point a safe distance from the location. So do not park right next to the bomb. Adjust your distance and location if new information indicates the initial stopping point is too close. So if you pull up thinking it's on the far, far south side and you park on the north side and then you find out, hey, it's closer to the north side, make sure to adjust yourself, adjust your vehicle, adjust, evacuation routes, etc. Observations during approach. It is essential to follow a tactical approach when arriving at the site of a bomb threat. Make sure you note landmarks and approximate safe distances so you can give directions to responding units. Be aware that items that may not initially appear important may be potential evidence. So pieces of exploded devices could be evidence and you don't realize it in that moment. Assessing the credibility of a threat. Locate the person who received the threat, even though that person may not be at the scene. The recipient is sometimes the most important witness, so interview them as soon as possible. Credibility would be the major issue in determining whether to search or evacuate. The owner or building representative must give permission to search or evacuate unless you find a device. In this case, the area has become a crime scene and you will order a mandatory evacuation. So remember, you need consent. Unless you actually see the device, then you're going in. And also remember that if nobody's there, you're going to use implied consent and you're going to go in without consent. So if nobody's at the building, you're going to go in because it's implied that they want you to save their business. But if they are there, you have to get consent. And if they don't give consent, but you see the bomb for some reason, then you're allowed to go in. Treat all threats in bomb situations as credible until proved otherwise. And the amount of detail provided in the threat may also show that the threat is real and let you know that the risk level involved. So, for example, if a test question is saying they give you the time, the location, the exact place, the type of bomb, blah, 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 all this information, if the question is that a credible threat or a non-credible threat or whatever, for that one, I'd put a credible threat. Then we move on to searching for an explosive device. A general safe distance for the initial perimeter is 1,000 feet from the supposed location of the bomb. So that would be a safe distance automatically. Is 1,000 feet. Obviously, you'll expand that if you find out it's a bigger bomb. If there is no good protective cover available, or if the type and amount of explosive requires it, obviously, like I just said, increase the evacuation distance. In an emergency, if the owner or building representative cannot be located, you may conduct the search without consent, like I said previously. If there is a booby trap concern, only special units or bomb squads should conduct the search. So if you see booby traps or someone says that, hey, the guy said there'd be booby traps or the guy himself says that, then only bomb squads or special units are going in, not you. Make sure you know what a secondary explosive device is. This is a bomb placed at the scene of an ongoing emergency response that is intended to cause casualties among first responders. Typically, these devices are hidden or camouflaged, and bombers place the devices in ordinary objects such as vehicles, flashlights, backpacks, flower pots, or garbage cans. Conducting the search. If no search plan exists, make a plan that will systematically cover all necessary areas and remove confusion. So if the test question comes up, there's no plan, what are we doing? You're making a plan, but you're making sure that plan is systematic and you're going to cover all areas. Unless you know the exact location of the device, conduct an exterior search of the building perimeter. So if you don't know the exact location, what are you doing? You are searching the outside perimeter first. But if you do know the exact location, you're going directly to it. So if you get a bomb threat, it's at, blank Walmart, and that's all the information you have, you're going to start by going around the Walmart first. You're going to look for things that could have been dropped off, vehicles, backpacks, whatever. But if they say, hey, it's in the Walmart in the health section where the vitamins are, you're not searching the perimeter. You're going right into that section. So keep that in mind. A test question comes up where you don't know where the direction is. What are you searching first? The perimeter, the inside, the front desk, whatever. You're doing the perimeter first. Follow this by searching evacuation routes, evacuee points, collection points, staging areas, and command posts. These are ideal locations for a secondary device. So when it comes to secondary devices, make sure you're searching these places where people could potentially evacuate or congregate. If the building is next to a street, begin at the edge of the street. So I guess a good place for a secondary bomb would be if, the building's right next to a road, the first place you'd want to maybe look is right along that road and then go to the perimeter. After the exterior search, then you conduct an interior search. So if they ask, what do you search first, the inside or the outside? Like I said, you do the outside if you don't know where it is. If you know where it is, you're going right to it. A building's interior search should go from bottom to top, beginning with the basement areas. And the reason for that is because it's much easier to get into bottom layers rather than taking stairwells or elevators to go up for the person leaving the bomb. Pay attention to any vehicle parked unusually close to the building, abandoned luggage, gym bags, backpacks, buggies, strollers, or suspicious packages. If you find nothing suspicious, be careful telling the property owner. Liability could be an issue if you offer such definitive statements such as, there are no explosives at this location, or it is safe to go back inside. Do not tell them anything definitive. Just say, we couldn't find anything, we couldn't locate anything, enter your own risk, etc. Last thing here, recognizing a suspicious item. If you find a suspicious item, what do? You don't run. You vacate the room or area immediately. Keep that in mind, and that concludes Chapter 14. Again, suspicious item, you see it, vacate the room or area immediately.